Hello, this is Bob Cooke here from the internet YouTube channel TA Therapy. I'm here to talk about the borderline personality disorder. So the beginning of my presentation shows a slide there which sort of symbolizes the two sides of the borderline, which you're going to sort of meet if you work with this type of client. Okay, so let's move on to a mnemonic, a profile which Elena Greenberg put together, who's a Gestalt therapist from the New York Psychotherapy Institute. And she puts together this whole profile position, starting with mother problems, identity, splitting, engulfment, fear of abandonment, rage, and yearning, which she called misery. And this is her profile position, really, of how the borderline comes to be. So let's start with mother problems. I think what she means by this is in the separation individuation stage of the borderline, there's problems. And the mother, who probably has a narcissistic injury, quite damaged or challenged anyway, really gives no strokes for the infant who needs to psychologically individuate, and gives lots of strokes if the infant stays with her in a needy, dependent, infantilized way. So there we have an internal split to begin with, which is shown later in the development of the borderline in adolescence and adulthood, when they, in relationships and functioning in life, may move from those two positions, wanting to be an adult and also feeling they need to please their internal mother and stay in this sort of dependent place, this infantile place, where they have a reservoir of internal strokes. So this sort of split that you'll see presented. Okay, let's go on to what she calls identity. And the identity, therefore, given what I was saying with the mother problems, means that the two parts of the borderline are not integrated. And you'll see a sort of identity crisis with the borderline moving from one part to the other part. As I said, this needy part versus this independent part. And they have self-esteem issues, of course, from this, and are always attempting to really integrate those two parts of their own identity to make a real self. Okay, let's go on to splitting, which is a real feature of the borderline. They've learned to dissociate, to split between the two parts of the self, as I said, and you'll see this happen in the therapy sessions. They'll move and present from one part of themselves to the other part particularly quickly. And of course, it's a defensive process, so they can actually keep the mother, if you like, in a soothing place for themselves. Okay, so let's go on now to the next. So borderlines have a fear of abandonment at a morbid level, because they fear being abandoned because the original injury was from the mother, if they actually became successful or individuated. And of course they fear being overwhelmed as well. Now the abandonment plays itself out in relationships and life. They feel separation anxiety, even if their partner or the person they're in relationship with, or even the therapist, may be late. They need to be in close proximity with their close other in relationship. Otherwise they start to feel separate and start to feel that anxiety that goes with that. And in fact, most of their defensive positions are to defend against this feeling of abandonment in life, or this feeling of rejection. Okay, so they're always expecting the therapist to abandon them, or they're expecting their partners, lovers, friends, caretakers to abandon them. So they're always defending against that. They always have a sort of underlying anxiety in that process. And of course they have a lot of rage. They have a lot of rage as being denied to the process of separation. They, interestingly enough, see contact in terms of aggression, in terms of annihilation, in terms of anger, in terms of rage. So their contact making tends to be at that level, which of course, interestingly enough, goes against what the borderline actually wants, which is contact, because the therapist or the person in relationship with the borderline will withdraw, which of course means that the borderline person actually gets more angry, so that doesn't help either. So you'll see this intensity with any borderline presentation. And finally, Elena Greenberg talks about the yearning side of the borderline, who underneath all this yearns for the real self, yearns for real true contact, and also there's a great sadness at a lost childhood here, a paradise lost. So that's her profile. I'm going to add on a few other things. That one of the positions that a borderline takes with any person in relationship, and particularly a therapist, of course, is that nothing's enough for them. So that makes sense to me. So the therapist who actually tries to fill that void for the therapist, in other words, goes across boundaries, or may stay the extra half hour in the therapy session, is really onto a loser here, because they are attempting to fill a void from many years ago and not in the present. However, the therapist will feel, they'll be on the other end of a lot of rage or a lot of aggression if they start to go over the boundaries, really, because they can never fill, as I said, that void of yesterday. So what happens is that as the therapist can't do that, then the actual borderline position is to feel or fear abandonment, of course, which takes them back to that early injury with the mother abandoning them if they were successful or wanted to be their real self. So there's a defensive process against that. Okay, so that's her profile of the borderline position. I just want to add a few things. Number one, when you work with a borderline or see a borderline act out in this way from one side of themselves to another side of themselves in that confused manner, please remember this is a client that has been badly hurt all those years ago, and has great emotional confusion. The treatment needs to be highly structured. The therapist needs to be predictable in their services, needs to provide a container for the borderline to be able to talk about their anxieties and all their fears, and needs to be, more than anything else, in a place of continuity, and therefore the borderline in sessions to explore their earliest hurts and their earliest confusions. And also it's important to remember that the history of someone who's borderline will be from a dysfunctional family where there's been usually high trauma, neglect, or cumulative neglect even. Certainly a history where there's chaos or chaoticness, and the person will be coming from a traumatized place. The therapy will be long, it won't be particularly joyful because you've got these challenges. The borderline tends to idolize you, or idolize the therapist first, because they have a yearning that their needs can be met finally at last. And then when, of course, the therapist can't fulfill that task, that is impossible because the injuries from years ago, then the borderline switches to attack, to depersonalize, devalue, and annihilate the other who can't meet those early needs. So beware of this. The important part is to have therapy and supervision so that you can stay depersonalized and come from an executive adult place instead of a hurt, rejected, perhaps child ego state who withdraws from the perceived attack. Okay, hope that's useful, and I will be doing a further presentation probably tomorrow or the next day on the DSM-4 classifications for borderlines, and then a final presentation on how to treat the borderline position. Okay, thank you. Bye bye.